time to welcome Andrew Reinhart and the wonderful segment Becoming Gift. But before we bring Andrew on, I want to thank Andrew. Talk about Becoming Gift. Andrew, what a gift he is to Annunciation Radio. We just concluded our pilgrimage to Poland, 15th anniversary pilgrimage to Poland. Andrew stepped up at the last minute and made himself available to accompany our pilgrims there. First and foremost, I want to thank him for that because he's always there, ready to fill in the gap. And what a and let's just be honest, what a sacrifice that was for him to go to Poland. What a sacrifice for his lovely wife and his family to make that work. So
if you would have called Andrew and said, "Hey, I can't mow my lawn this week. Can you come over and mow my lawn?" He probably would have done it. But
he would. That's Andrew. Yeah, I'm testing that one out this weekend. By the way. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Pat, Dave, and Ron.
Hi, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I feel like I have to thank you for giving me the opportunity to go on the pilgrimage. Such a blessing. And today I wanted to actually just reflect a bit on pilgrimage itself, what we do, because what's unique about pilgrimage is you have to bring the body, right? You take the body somewhere. And of course, it was such a blessing to be on the 15th anniversary pilgrimage to Poland. And it really got me reflecting on what a pilgrimage is and what it's all about. We're surrounded by opportunities for pilgrimage in our church, whether it be just visiting a local shrine or, making a visit to the Blessed Sacrament in the middle of the day, or, this year, the Jubilee of Hope, the bishops designated a handful of sites around the diocese, the shrines in Bellevue and Cary and Our Lady of Hope in Attica and our cathedral, where you can go on pilgrimage. Some of the history of pilgrimage, I think, is really interesting because, pilgrimage, I think, is something deeply human. Think of, something just as simple as having to move your flocks for the seasons, for example. These ancient peoples would have been moving around, I think, a lot more than we probably expect them to have. And think of the scripture, Mary visiting Elizabeth with Jesus after, the visitation, after the Annunciation, kind of a pilgrimage of sorts, or even the chosen people returning to Jerusalem every year for the Passover. So this idea of taking yourself somewhere for a spiritual purpose is deep and rich in human history. A lot of the development historically of pilgrimage in Western Christianity actually grew out of the Crusades. There was a special indulgence attached for the Crusaders to go and, protect Constantinople and reclaim lands once Christian and protect the Christians of the Holy Land. Now, of course, they weren't all as moral as we would have hoped they had been on their crusading. But as the Holy Land was captured by the Christians, it opened it up for the possibility of pilgrimage. And in many ways, the indulgences or blessings or graces that were attached to pilgrimage were sort of similar to the graces or indulgences that were attached to being a crusader. So the three kind of biggest pilgrimages in Christendom were, of course, the Holy Land, the city of Rome, and then the Camino de Santiago de Compostela in the northwest of Spain. That one's been popularized a lot in recent years, the famous Camino, where people take pilgrimage across the north of Spain, even starting in France at times. So for us pilgrims on this 15th anniversary pilgrimage of Annunciation Radio to Poland, I was so struck by being in Chesnogorna, where the Our Lady of Czestochowa image is, the blessed, miraculous image. It just, almost overwhelming the graces that have been experienced in that place by this ancient icon that's there. The walls of that chapel are just basically plastered with little offerings where people have experienced a miracle and left a little piece of precious metal, in different shapes depending on what the miracle was. And it's literally just the wallpaper of the room is these little offerings. And then, you often see these icons that are kind of covered in metal and precious gems and things. They call those dresses, and those are actually adorned with the little offerings people have left as a result of the miracles they've received. So they have dozens of these, they call them dresses they put on Mary, and she's adorned and clothed with the signs of her miracles. While we were there, it was just a regular weekday, nondescript day of the week. There were probably 5,000 pilgrims there, mostly Polish people. There's a large boulevard that connects one of the local churches to the shrine up the hill that goes on for a few miles. And I was walking down there to get lunch. There were just these large gaggles of pilgrims singing and dancing. They had, travel stereos on their backs. They're probably 500 people.
Wow.
Just marching in procession
on a weekday
up this hill on a weekday. Now, And it just really expressed, I think, the deep faith of the people of Poland, but also the value of pilgrimage. This idea of taking the body, that it's important to show up. In our modern day and age, we have so many virtual options. And I think virtual options are great. They're a great blessing. I think it's a great way to make contact, and it's a great way to stay in touch. But it's not really a great way to build relationship unless you absolutely have to. Think of like a job interview. You might find your job online, even do a first interview online, but you want to meet that candidate in person before you hire them for the job. Similarly with maybe making a close friend or a spouse. You might meet them online, but then you want to spend time with them in the body to build that relationship. So it's the same way with God. It's great to look at pictures of somewhere or pray a devotion to something that's far away, but it's a whole nother matter to bring the body there. And of course, if you can't, it's better than nothing to visit virtually. But we as humans are a person who is body and soul, intimately one thing. So it's essential that we're not just detached minds traveling about the universe, but we need to bring the body to be fully human. And I think that's the heart of pilgrimage, to bring the body to receive the grace that God has to offer to us.
In that particular pilgrimage, too, Andrew, I mean, there's such a dichotomy for us, right, in faith, of beauty and pain, of suffering and joy. And in that particular pilgrimage, you have to say you experienced the heights of both, right? I mean, you got to visit things like Our Lady of Czestochowa, but you also went to Auschwitz. And I can't even imagine. My wife was on the pilgrimage as well. She's been able to put into words the experiences of every other place. And every time she begins to recount that one, it's a little more difficult to put words into that experience of visiting Auschwitz.
Yeah, the whole history of the Polish people are that mix of suffering and pain mixed with blessings. You go all the way back to the Mongol conquest of the region, in the armies that sort of destroyed the area, the different invasions by other Christian countries like the Swedes, and eventually being partitioned by the Prussians and the Russians and the Austro-Hungarians, and then the great sufferings they went through. They say they lost World War II twice.
Yeah,
that's how they express it, that they were both conquered by the Nazis, but then conquered by the Soviets. And both groups did their own set of destruction, to the point where at the end, Warsaw, 85% of the structures in Warsaw were destroyed between those two invasions. Just amazing. And it reflects in their devotions. Our Lady of Czestochowa is a wounded Madonna. She has wounds on her face from some marauders who went into the monastery, and they didn't steal the image, but they cut it up with a sword. And when the image was repaired, the king decided, leave the wounds there in the repaired image. And I think that's really a great kind of sacramental sign of the Polish people themselves. Great wounds, but also great blessings. Even in the life of John Paul II,
That's a big one, yeah.
By the time he's 25 or 26, his mom dies, his brother dies, his father dies. He's under Nazi occupation, then under Soviet occupation, has to go to seminary clandestinely. Just a life riddled with suffering, but also a life that transcends it. For all intents and purposes, he could have ended up in a psych ward at the end of all of that trauma. But by the Lord's grace, it hollowed him out to be a great man. And that's what we're all invited to do.
And gave us that great document, Salvifici Dolores, if I said it correctly, but on human suffering. Boy, coming from him, it means so much.
Yeah, born of experience and also rich theology. And I think that's everything he published.
Can't wait to hear more about the Poland pilgrimage. So hopefully, we'll chat again about that, because there's obviously so much to learn about it. Andrew, thanks.
Thank you so much.